A decade ago, a private equity deal needed about 5% annual EBITDA growth to clear a 2.5 time return. Today, the same outcome, the same 2.5, the same target requires 10 to 12%. Not a forecast, not a strategy, a recalculation of what the same result now requires. The deal your firm is underwriting this quarter, was it built against a 5 or against a 12? Does anyone in the room actually know which one? For 20 years, that 5% number worked. Leverage did the part of the job. Multiple expansion did another part. And organic growth, 5, maybe 6%, filled in the rest. That wasn't optimism. It was arithmetic, validated across thousands of transactions from the mid-2000s through 2021. Cheap debt amplified equity returns without requiring operating conviction. Rising multiples meant firm could underwrite a conservative growth case on an exit multiple upward. Operating improvement was the smallest ingredient in the recipe, which is exactly why it was the least scrutinized. That was a reasonable way to run a fund for a while. Two of those three ingredients are now structurally smaller. Leverage is capped near 30 to 40% of the capital structure. Borrowing costs sit at 8 to 9%. That's not a cyclical inconvenience. That's a different capital structure regime. And the third ingredient, multiple expansion, isn't there to absorb the difference either. Entry pricing right now is, by Bain's own measure, about as expensive as it has ever been in the industry's history. So the recipe hasn't changed, it's just missing two of its three working ingredients. That's the whole mechanism for now. How the leverage percentage and the cost of debt actually combine to produce a specific required growth rate, that's a longer conversation, and it's coming later in this series. For today, hold on to the inputs: capped leverage, higher cost of debt, expensive entry, and hold on to the output. With those two levers narrowed, the same 2.5 times outcome now requires 10 to 12% annual EBITDA growth. This is not a survey of what firms say they're prioritizing. It's arithmetic, return decomposition math about what the same outcome now demands. And this isn't theoretical. It's already visible in results. Distributions to net asset value have sat below 15% for 4 consecutive years. Roughly 32,000 portfolio companies worth close to 3.8 trillion remain unsold. The average holds have stretched towards 7 years. That's not a slow exit market working itself out. That's a population of assets underwritten to a bar they can no longer clear. If a meaningful share of the industry's current portfolio was priced against the old 5% math, then no amount of skilled execution changes the outcome. The deal doesn't underperform. It fails to clear the return the fund promised its LPs, regardless of how well it's run. There's a story the industry tells itself about this moment: that private equity strategically pivoted towards operations, a deliberate repositioning, a sign of a maturing industry. That story has the casualty backwards. That story has the causality backwards. There was no strategic shift. There was a mechanical constraint. The arithmetic removed every other option first, and the industry started calling the constraint a strategy. If you've described your own firm as more operationally focused now and meant it as evidence of foresight, this is worth sitting with. You may have been describing a forced move as if it were a choice. That distinction isn't academic. A strategic emphasis can be underinvested without real consequence. A mechanical constraint cannot be. You either clear the bar or you don't. And this new bar is landing on an industry that, by its own admission, already can't verify whether most of its operating plans are working at all. Firms have reported delivering less than half of what their own value creation plans targeted, using the older, easier target. That's not a new problem stacked on an old one. That's the same gap now carrying twice the load. One deal underwritten to the wrong bar is as bad as an outcome for one fund. An entire vintage underwritten to the wrong bar is a governance problem for the industry. The industry didn't choose operating value creation as a strategy. The math removed every other option, and most of the models sitting in the data rooms right now haven't been told. If operating value creation is now mathematically load bearing rather than optional, then the absence of a shared framework for creating it isn't an academic gap any longer. That's the largest unpriced risk sitting inside the industry's return model. 12 is the new 5, and most of the models in your data room still say 5. My name is Preston Leahy, and that is why I am the go-to for payroll and private equity nationwide. No exceptions, no rivals. See you on the next episode.